What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Ideal Offseason. This is a series that I do that basically, whenever a team's getting eliminated from the playoffs right now, I'm demonstrating what I think their ideal offseason would be. I'm putting a GM hat on and trying to give them the best case scenario for their offseason. This is a reminder to go like, subscribe, comment. I've responded to every comment on my YouTube channel so far, and I intend to keep on doing so. So please go leave me a comment. I'd love to talk to you guys. All right, now that all that YouTube BS is out of the way, let's talk about ideal offseason. So again, this is where I put the GM cap on a little bit, and I'm taking different teams throughout the NBA and being like, what does their ideal offseason look like? And now, we did it earlier on in the season with some of the not as good teams, and it wasn't about building them a championship contender or anything like that. It was, what's the best offseason for them to get the franchise pointing in the right direction? And we're trying to do that with every single team. The Milwaukee Bucks are the team in question today. They need to win a championship, right? So it's very evident. That's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to make these guys a title contender. And honestly, I think this is going to be one of my more straightforward ones for a couple reasons. And let's just start diving into it. One, the Milwaukee Bucks have a really, really good roster, right? Obviously, Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, they're getting old. Even Dame's starting to get old a little bit. But you still got Giannis, you still got Dame. They're great players. Middleton's game doesn't rely on athleticism anyway. Brook Lopez still looks solid. You got Bobby Portis off the bench. Guys like Beauchamp, I think, are going to be interesting for this team going forward. I really like Andre Jackson Jr. as a bench player. I think he's awesome. Pat Connaughton, always an option for this team. Nice to have shooters off the bench. Looking at some other factors, though, let's zoom in a little bit here. Let's take a look at salary cap space. This team's going to be in the second tax apron. They're going to pay for it. They've made it very clear that they don't care about that stuff. It's not like we're going to be picking up any major signings anyway, so I'm not surprised that this is kind of what the Bucks are going to have to do, and I'm not going to be trying to like clear a bunch of cap space or anything. We're trying to win a championship. We can't do that. So let's take a look at this current contracts that we have on the team. We've got 5 roster spots left to fill. I personally don't plan on trading anybody on this team. Not really sure that it's worth it. Obviously, you got your core players here with Giannis, Lillard, Middleton, Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, right? Pat Connaughton, not really worth moving him in my opinion. Beauchamp, I think, is going to be a player for us going forward, and there's actually a team option on him this year, and I'm just going to tell you right now, we're going to pick it up, because he's a big, lengthy wing that can play some defense and that can attack the hoop a little bit. Hard guys to find. Let's keep developing the young talent, right? I want to keep Beauchamp around. AJ Green, nice shooter off the bench. Doesn't do a ton else for you. I wish he wouldn't have gotten quite as many minutes in the playoffs that he did. But you know what? He's worth keeping around on the team. He's cheap, right? He knows the system already. And that's kind of the same logic we're using with Chris Livingston. I'm not a huge fan of his game or anything, but is it really worth moving him? Like, what, I'm going to have to attach a second-round pick for someone to take a flyer on him? It's just, no, he can just chill on the bench or whatever. We'll see if he turns into something. Andre Jackson Jr., cheap contract, could very well even be a starter at some point, maybe at the 2. If his three-point shot gets good enough, love Andre Jackson Jr. It's worth noting here, Damian Lillard does have a player option technically for this season. I'm going to go ahead and assume he's going to pick that up. There's no way he doesn't pick that up. So, yeah. So we've got our roster, at least for this season, right? I suppose I shouldn't say we have our roster. We've got the current roster that we have under contract. We're pretty set on those guys. They're fine. They can stick around. What do we have for draft picks now? Well, let's zoom in on that and take a look, because we don't have many assets to work with at all on this team. We actually have 2 picks this year, though, and I want to use both of them because we don't have many draft picks coming forward. It's not really worth attaching like a Pat Connaughton and a pick to go get somebody right now. I just don't know who that would be that would really make a substantial enough difference. I think that we can get some value out of these guys, some guys that'll be on the team for a while. We'll get them under nice cheap contracts for a little bit, because like the 22nd pick and the 33rd pick, not very expensive at all. Not worried about that whatsoever. So we bring those guys in. I feel really, really good about that. We've got a 2026 first round pick that technically like the best between us and New Orleans. It'll go to them. And then kind of the same thing with Portland in 2028. So not a ton of assets to use in a trade anyway, but I promise you we're going to use these 2 picks in this upcoming draft. And honestly, the draft is where I want to start things out. So that's what we're going to go do first. We're going to go on over here to Fanspo. If you guys don't know what Fanspo is, it's a really cool website that has a bunch of really in-depth tools to use for like the NBA and stuff like that. And honestly, other sports, I'm sure. It looks like they have an NFL thing. I haven't messed with that at all, but I think it's cool nonetheless. And so to try and keep this series as realistic as possible, because I want this to be as realistic as possible, I'm going to use this draft simulator because it's got like all this like AI components in it that you can adjust to be like, hey, I want this to like kind of work out this way, and it takes all that into account, and we can operate as the Bucks within the draft room. Because otherwise, I'm just being like, I'm going to guess this guy's available now, so I'm going to get him, right? Where this way, it adds a little bit more realism to it. Alrighty, so as you can see, the mock draft is kind of going to run itself. It's going to use all this evaluation that it's done on players, and it uses multiple sources for it. It's really cool. So it's going to simulate through the draft how it thinks it's going to go. Obviously, it can go a ton of different ways because it's a different simulation every time, but we're going to use that to add that sense of realism, right? Now, there's a specific player that I do want in this draft. I have a backup plan in mind, but I want to use this mock draft to address some needs for the team. I need players that can contribute right now. And I think with the 22nd pick, we can probably find somebody like that, right? Somebody that can come in, fill a positional need for us right away. Because I don't need a project on this team, right? Like I need players that can help me win right now. And kind of the spots you're looking at for that are around the point guard, like a backup there, or reserve maybe stretch forward or something, or like another defensive center or something like that, right? To add some more height to the team. Because Bobby Portis can always play the 4. It's not probably his best position, but we've seen it work plenty of times. Alrighty, so we're finally on the clock here, and honestly, the player that I wanted wasn't available. There was this particular guard that I wanted named Devin Carter. I thought he would have kind of filled the backup point guard role for us, but that's okay. The backup is here, and that's actually Zach Edey. I'm not even kidding either. I think Zach Edey makes a lot of sense on this team. He doesn't have to come in and dominate offensively or anything like that. He can just be a big body for us coming off the bench, give us a different look, right? Give us some more size out there. He can definitely go in and play right away. I just think like his height and everything is going to be something that we can use as a mismatch come playoff time and everything, and he's just going to be ready to go right away, right? And that's the point of him. You look at some of these other guys, right? Like I'm not so sure they're ready to contribute right away. Like McCullough maybe, but I don't know. I don't feel like we need anybody else at that position. I'd rather take a bigger point guard. So with this pick, I am going to take Zach Edey. So Zach Edey will make this much money for 4 seasons. Awesome. Zach Edey is going to slide in right there as kind of like, he's technically the 3rd big on the team, but Bobby Portis can play some 4 at sometimes. I'd find it hard to believe Zach Edey doesn't find a way to crack the rotation there. So now we move this stuff up and we start to focus on the 33rd pick now, which I don't necessarily have an idea in mind. So we're just going to go back to the simulation, and we're going to see who becomes available. There goes guys like Tyler Smith, right? Draft's moving a lot faster now. I might have set the speed higher too. But all right, so we're coming back up now. Oh, it's actually the 34th pick. My bad. All right, so we have some interesting names available. Like Justin Edwards is an interesting pick. Dylan Jones is a little bit interesting. I'm looking for guys that are a little bit more established because Justin Edwards, project. DJ Wagner's a project, right? I look at even like a Trey Alexander is like a project. So I'm looking at like the Dylan Jones, the Hunter Salas. Well, Hunter Salas is kind of like a combo guard, and I don't want to try to figure out what position he's going to play in the NBA. Maybe more like an AJ Mitchell. AJ Mitchell interests me because he's kind of a different look for the team, right? Because he's a bigger point guard. He can play a little bit more defense. He's not like the best outside shooter. He did shoot like 40%, but it was on pretty low volume. So that's kind of interesting. He could play off ball when other guys have the ball. So he could be kind of a complementary piece of sorts there. But I don't know how great his playmaking is necessarily. But like he's good at attacking and things like that, which opens up options for other shooters. So maybe you get him around enough good players, maybe something like that could work out. But I mean, like let's take a look at like a Dylan Jones or something like that. Like, obviously, Dylan Jones had a really good season over at Weber, does a bit of everything. Like, you see the 21, 10, and 5, right? I mean, it's hard to argue with numbers like that, right? I mean, he just does a little bit of everything, and I don't necessarily know what his game is going to be when you get him into the NBA. You look at our depth chart and everything, and there's some players that we're going to be probably bringing back at the wings. So I don't necessarily know if we need him here. You could look at a guy like Oso as well, but I don't want to bring in a big that can't space on this team. I just don't think that ever makes sense when you got like Giannis on the floor. So that's probably the reason I'm not going to go with him. So what I'm probably going to do is I think I'm going to go with AJ Mitchell here. I think that the potential of him becoming a three-point shooter is there. And so I want to kind of take the route with that, and I like the ability to have a bigger point guard that can come in and try to guard some of these other guards in the NBA. I don't know if he's going to be our backup point guard actually next year. We'll try to address it in free agency, but for the time being, I think this is what we're going to stick with. So that's how much AJ Mitchell's going to make. He's going to slide in right here for the time being so that we have another point guard on the roster. And that's what we ended up doing with our draft, y'all. Got a couple players that I think are a little bit more ready to contribute should we need them right away in Zach Edey and AJ Mitchell. Again, not how I exactly wanted the draft to go. I was hoping to pick up a better point guard earlier on, and I think that'd be the ideal situation for them overall. But in this world, and that's how the simulation went, that's just how it's going to be. Okay, so what happens now? We've got 3 roster spots left and we're hitting free agency, right? There's a couple names that we want to take a look at because we have some interesting free agents that are already out there, right? And so we want to explore that, see what else is out there on the market, and try to build a competent team around that. Taking a look at our free agents first, we've got some guys we got to make a decision on. First of all, Malik Beasley. Malik Beasley was on a really cheap contract this last year. As you can see, he was only on a minimum contract. He was kind of trying to get his value up. I think he's more than gotten his value up. I don't think he's going to acquire or do anything like that crazy, but we have his bird rights, so we can sign him to something over the cap. I'm going to assume that we can bring Malik Beasley back, and I think what we're going to do is to kind of give him something a little more favorable. I think we're going to give him $6.5 million, and we're going to give it to him over 2 years. He's going to have a player option on this contract to be like, hey, if you really ball out again, dude, because you earned more money this year, that's for sure. You had a phenomenal shooting season for us. You were solid defensively. You weren't great, but is any team going to really give you more than that? Kind of doubt it. So give this another chance to prove yourself while also getting a raise, right? So we bring Malik Beasley back. I think Malik Beasley instantly kind of slides into that second option here. Pat Connaughton becomes the backup. We throw Malik Beasley back here in at the starting shooting guard. We got our starting shooting guard back. We've got 2 roster spots left. Let's take a look at these other people. Patrick Beverley, interesting backup point guard option. He's getting a little bit older, great locker room guy. How much of a priority is he? Jay Crowder's out there. Wasn't too impactful for us. Not that interested. Gallinari wasn't too impactful. Not too interested in him. Thanasis, I mean, he's probably just got to come back, right? I mean, I've actually got some buddies they used to be within the Bucks staff. They got let go when Doc took over or whatever, but they were like, yeah, Thanasis is probably just going to have to stay on the roster. It's not even necessarily Giannis asking for it, is what they tell me, but is what it is. But so anyway, so we probably got to bring Thanasis back on a minimum. So Thanasis will probably slide in there as like the 3rd, 4 or whatever. I don't even know if you can call Beauchamp that, but that's just where I slotted him for now. And so let's talk about backup point guard then. So Patrick Beverley's an option for us, but what else is out there? If we go search by positions, point guards, this is where I get kind of curious, right? Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry's going to want to sign with a playoff contender. I think that they're more than a playoff contender at this point, right? Somebody he can actually play for, do some damage on. Nobody's going to give him more than a minimum contract this year, man. He's going to be how old? He's going to be 39 next year. Still played great defense, can still shoot a little bit. Can he just play some backup point guard minutes for us and play solid defense, be an educator to A.J. Mitchell? Maybe A.J. Mitchell becomes something sooner rather than later. I think that's more than reasonable. Other guys to look at like Reggie Jackson, Russell Westbrook. I don't think you need to bring Russell Westbrook onto this team. I don't think that makes sense. I'd rather have Kyle Lowry in limited minutes. I think he'll be good in a limited minutes role. So I'm going to assume that we can go bring in our boy Kyle Lowry. This is how much Kyle Lowry would be earning. He'd get a 1-year contract. He instantly becomes the new backup point guard here. Yay, awesome. Good job for Kyle Lowry. Alrighty, we've got a very expensive but very talented basketball team. We've got a nice starting 5. We're bringing back the same 5 because it worked last year. It's a good 5, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, Giannis and Lillard got hurt. This is a competitive basketball team, right? It's honestly more so the game plan and the coaching that they got to figure out more than anything else, right? And I can't control that from afar. I'm just the GM in this situation. You've got Beasley and Pat Connaughton coming back. You've got shooters surrounding your good players. That's awesome. Chris Middleton's still here. Andre Jackson Jr. might even become the starting 2 at some point. Beauchamp's got another season to get better. Obviously, you got Giannis here. Zach Edey's an interesting option now for you to throw out there in case you want to do something like Beauchamp doesn't become like the 4. Maybe it's Portis is just kind of first backup big and then Edey plays some backup big minutes, right? Where he's just waiting in the dunker spot, blocking shots, getting rebounds and putting them back in because there's just not many people his size in the NBA either, right? He's 7'4", 300 pounds. There's just not many people that are going to be able to stop him if he gets right next to the hoop still. So I like the option of having Edey out there. I like Lowry as the backup point guard. A.J. Mitchell's maybe someone that if something happens to Lowry or something, we could trust to run some backup point guard minutes and at least be like a defender because he's got a little more size. So I like this. I think this is a pretty good situation. Obviously, if it was up to me, I probably wouldn't bring Antetokounmpo back. But look, we're being realistic here. They're going to bring Thanasis back most likely. As long as Giannis is here, Thanasis will have a job in the NBA, and that just is what it is. At least we can all watch the memes of him and everything online because I do love those, and I do like the energy he plays with. But I think this is probably some of the best things that Milwaukee can do this offseason. You could make an argument that they could try to package Pat Connaughton with what was the first round pick that we used on Edey to try and get a more like established player or something right now. But I think bringing in a little bit of youth would be a good thing for this team, honestly. They could use a little bit more out there, and I'd rather just have Pat Connaughton on the team in all honesty. I like his three-point shooting ability off the bench. I think that's valuable for this team. But otherwise, I think this is it. So you guys let me know what you think of this team and everything. Can this team compete for... Yeah, it can compete for a championship. Don't tell me it can't. All right? You're just lying to yourself then. Unless something detrimental happens to this team will be in competition for the finals, right? So, but what do we think of the little moves that we made and everything? Not as interesting as maybe some other off seasons, but I think efficient nonetheless. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Like, subscribe, comment, YouTube things. And next one, we'll do the Sixers. It's probably not going to drop till Sunday. I'm probably going to record it today, but I've got a lot of other videos pumping out, and I want to make sure they get their attention and everything too. So be on the lookout Sunday for the Sixers version. But thanks so much, y'all. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye.